r/AskReddit by Redmond Dtes. Therapists of Reddit, what's been your biggest, I know I'm not supposed to judge, but holy shit moment? I once had a man who was attending family therapy with his 3 children admit that his last child, a girl, was an accident we tried to abort. We only wanted boys. The sad thing is, the girl didn't even look bothered. She had clearly heard it all before. They were attending family therapy as the girl was actively suicidal and they didn't know why. I worked with a teenager who was struggling with eating disorders to the point she'd been hospitalized for organ damage at one point a few months before. I went to dinner with the girl and her mother. Her mom spent the entire dinner counting the individual pieces of rice she, the mom, was eating so she could accurately count the calories she consumed. I asked the mom to stop and she just stared at me and asked why she would do that, because she had to watch her figure. I wonder where the 15-year-old got her eating disorder from. Edit. For those of you wondering why I was eating with the kid and the mom, the teen was inpatient and the mom was visiting. I was working as a psych tech and the kid wasn't allowed to eat an absent since I had to document her food intake to make sure she was eating sufficiently as a part of her treatment plan. So I joined her and her mom in the cafeteria for the meal. I definitely passed along the info about the mom's eating habits for the therapist to follow up with in family therapy. I heard concerning information about the way a child was being treated, not my patient, but a sibling of the patient that I had never met, called CPS, and reported it that day, and the following day found out the child had died. It was traumatizing, and 6 years later I still think about it a lot. A lovely teen girl was brought to her first appointment with me by her dad. Her mom had, as diplomatically as he could spell it out to me, recently up and left the family to go live some selfish new age lifestyle with a Reiki healer. Just abandoned him with 2 kids to raise solo, and he was doing his best for them. Therapy was the daughter's idea. She had been having troubling intrusive thoughts lately about school shootings, like how to plan and execute one, and these thoughts were upsetting to her and she did not want to act on them. I can still picture how scared and sad she looked telling me this. I just wanted to wrap her in my arms, but instead I offered so much praise and encouragement for her seeking help and trusting me with this information. She also met most of the diagnostic criteria for onset of a schizoaffective disorder. We pulled dad into session, caught him up, explained the most urgent part of the plan. He was going to take her for a full level with a great psychiatrist colleague of mine who understood the situation and was going to get her in stat. Daughter seemed relieved, dad seemed relieved. We scheduled time to talk soon. Well, mom woke up from whatever festival ditch she had passed out in to angrily call my office and flip out on me. How dare I? Am I trying to poison her child with pharmaceuticals? Did I even draw her blood and check her vitamin levels? Do I want a bad Google review, or worse yet, a warrant issued for my arrest? Do I even understand herbal supplements? I need to stop now, because my head hurts remembering all of this. When I was an intern in my MSW program, I had a 19-year-old client tell me she was pregnant, didn't know who the dad was, but had narrowed it down to 3 guys, was not going to stop smoking meth, and had no intention of attending her OB-GYN appointments. However, she was going to keep the baby, to let her mom raise it, like she did with her other children. I had a woman once bring in her child for scholastic issues. The child clearly had fetal alcohol syndrome. I asked her gently if she consumed alcohol while pregnant, which she confirmed. When I told her that is likely the cause of the scholastic issues, she said, I don't feel bad about it. Fetal alcohol syndrome in general gives me a case of the what the F's. Had a patient in a group ask for advice because she was feeling pressured into sex she really didn't want to have. A friend had traveled 2 hours to see her and gotten a hotel room for them. The group heard her out, asked questions, and the consensus was something to the effect of, yeah, you probably owe it to him. It remains one of the only times I've dropped any effort at experiential or Socratic questioning and just flatly told people, absolutely not. Early on in my career, while working at a community mental health center, I had a 17-year-old client that had an 18-month-old daughter and was 4.5 months pregnant when we began working together. After we built enough trust in our relationship, she disclosed that she had been repeatedly raped by her father for the past 3 years. He had sole custody of her because her mom suffered from drug addiction and had her parental rights terminated. She reported to him to the local police, small town, however they were friendly with her father and didn't believe her. They told her they would only follow through with a report if she would detail her sexual assaults with her father present, stating that if she could not do that, they would know she was lying. Her biggest fears were that her children were biologically her father's. She would not get a DNA test because she didn't want to look at them or love them differently. I made several reports to several authorities that declined to investigate or remove her from the home. In the end, my supervisor and I worked our asses off to get her connected with a very thorough and helpful sexual assault agency in another state. My agency and the new agency split the cost to get her there, settled and safe. She was 18 years old by this time. I still think about her 20 years later and hope she's okay. I work as a mental health counselor. I'm licensed as a marriage and family therapist at a middle school, ages 11 to 14. I never judge any of the kids' actions, but some of these parents though. I have had kids literally tell me they're suicidal, and then I have to call their parent, who is effectively annoyed that they have to take their kid to get assessed. I also had a kid in the past whose parent was about to move across country for some woman they met on the internet and knew for 2 months. Some scary stuff. I had a client admit that they knowingly infected someone with HIV because they themselves were miserable and dealing with active drug addiction at the time, and they wanted someone else to be as unhappy as they were. When clients come out very casually and say a family member that they've mentioned is still in their lives, raped them when they were young. I had a preteen client whose guardian kept requesting progress notes to see how they've been doing. It's against clinic policy for clients and parents or guardians to have access to the notes. They're allowed to have access to everything else though. The client was very defiant to everyone, but was a wonderful kid throughout their treatment with me. When I met both with the guardian and parent, who both insisted on knowing everything about the kid, everything started making sense. Once the parent requested to switch therapists, only because I declined their request of the notes, I knew how unhealthy the family dynamics were. I felt bad for the kid because they were opening up more about the family dynamics and how they impacted them. We had a good therapeutic relationship. Mother gave up kids to stay with a pedophile. Not a therapist, but was a social worker. I worked with adults with developmental disabilities. A mother of one of my clients asked, "Why do I bother involving her son in activities?" Her son was dropped on the state's doorstep at the age of 3. Her son was 43 when he was my client. He delighted in and responded quite well to joining activities. It was another soul-crushing moment in the field. So many days of driving home crying and borderline alcoholism to numb the pain ended my almost 8 years in that field of work. Used to work in an acute child psych ward. Saw a lot of angry preteen elementary, think 8 to 12-year-olds, mostly boys, and most often than not, parents treated the kid really harshly and were shocked this only made the kid worse. Also worked in an area where they did not want to hear their old school parenting could be a problem. Had one dad who said, "Well yeah, I will spank him, 11-year-old son, when he gets angry. Look, I know everyone nowadays doesn't like that, but I was spanked my whole life, and I turned out fine." It took my entire ability to bite my tongue and not to say, "Sir, you just got out of prison 3 months ago after serving 5 years for a violent felony." we can judge. In fact, we have to judge harmful from helpful to be effective at this job. We also have to do no harm and provide the greatest beneficence to our clients. With that said, I've worked with child abusers and domestic violence perpetrators. On a number of occasions I've worked with murders and even a few folk involved in dog fighting. The thing that always struck me was not the sociopaths or how many former cops I saw, but how easy a few changes in your life and or brain can lead to someone being just as susceptible to pretty terrible impulses. I work in prison. Anything to do with child sex offenses or animal abuse pisses me off. My very first intake session ever as an intern was someone telling me they had been hooking up with their cousin since they were kids. It was quite the introduction to being a therapist. Started my first year practicum at the county behavioral health working with foster kids. Shadowed my co-worker for a session with a 10-year-old. On the drive back to the office, she told me that the 10-year-old was a victim of repeat CSA and has formed a great bond with her caregivers and wants to stay with them. However, her CPS social worker was actively trying to get her back with her mom, who was still living with her boyfriend that sexually assaulted the client. Her therapist continued to advocate for the client to stay with the caregivers because that's what the client wanted as well. I just cannot believe that CSA isn't an immediate nope not getting your kids back if that person is still in contact or lives with the perpetrator. Or is the perpetrator. Worked with a former therapist. Most memorable she had was a guy with serious emotional issues. His hands were all scarred up and always had fresh scabs on the knuckles when he came by. He said when he got mad, he would go to his shed and punch the soft concrete he had, or do the same to a dumpster when he was at work. In his words, he did this to avoid doing it to his girlfriend and kids, like his dad to him. The dad had told me I had 2.5 sessions to fix his daughter. My teenage client who threatened to assault me while his father just sat there. Another teenage client who got a giant tattoo of a band she had never heard of. An extremely abusive, like I got physically sick reading the reports of what she did to her children. Mother who had her children taken by CPS, complaining about the food at the foster home not being fresh enough. Mine is way milder than everyone else's, but when someone brings their child to me and they can't tell me the child's date of birth, it gets me every time. What do you mean you don't know? Saw a teen who had been sexually abused by their drug addict father tell me they wanted to join the military so they could kill people. After hearing their full backstory, I really couldn't blame them. I evaluated a child and had to testify in family court. During the court session, I learned that the mother had rented her oldest daughter to her friends when the daughter was 15-17. The mother told the daughter she had to do it, otherwise her siblings would be homeless and hungry. Mother used most of the money for drugs. Father pays rents and brings grocery every week because he knew mother didn't have money. Custody was 50-50 when this was happening. The judge did not terminate the mother's parental rights and mother got supervised weekend visits. The judge said it wasn't clear the mother's intention was for her friends to rape the daughter, so she wasn't going to terminate the mother's parental rights. She went on about the importance of children having a mother in their lives. Till this day, I judge both the mother and the judge. Maybe not the holy shit you're thinking of, but I get that feeling when I think about all of the ways my clients have been able to go on with their lives, despite how much shit they have had to carry. I was an intern working with veterans. One of them was a sex offender and was given to me, male, since he was super heresy with the female social workers. He boasted about how he was wrongfully imprisoned because the 2 girls he raped were lucky they got to experience sex for the first time with an experienced man, as opposed to a young boy. A client left their pet rabbit on their balcony and knowingly let it starve to death. Didn't feel bad about it at all. Sitting in a couple's session. First session ever with them. and they are openly discussing how they have 10 children between them from previous relationships and regularly physically fight each other. Both described raging so hard they would black out and not remember fights. Unfortunately, after they were unwilling to make a pledge that they would no longer use violence, I eventually had to end our therapeutic relationship. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening.